Pretty much every single developer that I talked to who's worked with GraphQL complained about exactly the same thing, and it is error handling. If you've never used GraphQL before or never handled errors within it, let me explain it with simply one sentence. You have an error on the server and you're gonna get a 200 HTTP status code. 200 status code, Carl, for an error. This is just mind-blowing, right? How can you get a 200 OK for an error? But that's how you deal with errors within GraphQL. The reasoning behind it, as the developers of GraphQL explain, is that they imagine it to sit on an application layer. So it kind of does not really care about errors that are happening on the network layer. Yeah, if you heard a different reason for it, please write it in the comments below. I'm really curious about it. But if you have an error while you're executing the code on a server and there's an exception happening, you can't just say, I'm not going to handle it because it's on a network layer, because it's obviously not. I'm not sure. Everything feels weird with this sentence, but let's not go very deep into this because that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to see what hurdles this error handling within GraphQL brings to us and how can we actually solve it. So as you can see, here's basically a diagram. And just to make it clear, I'm going to draw another arrow and imagine there's an error happening. So what you're going to get at 2 is 200 status code. That's really weird, isn't it? But a typical GraphQL response with an error would look something like this. Imagine you queried something and you're going to get data as you wanted, and you're also going to get errors. And the error is going to be an array with different objects inside, objects of errors basically. And they're going to have like a message field, locations, path, message, basically a message for the error. Locations let you see where the basically go line by line in the code. And path is basically which schema caused it, so to say, caused the error. Or there are many things that are wrong in this. First of all, there is no unique identifier for every error, right? What if you simply misspelled one character in the message? So on the client, on the front end, imagine you cannot distinguish these errors because they have different messages. So the community kind of thought about this issue and they came up with this solution. Basically, now you have extensions for these errors. So you can have additional fields like code. So cannot fetch by ID, for example. So that's gonna serve like a constant and like a unique identifier for an error. So you can distinguish them on the front end. But still, like, this means you have to loop through errors and so on. It's just weird, right? An array of errors, that's not something that you would normally get in a normal REST API. And you also have a timestamp here, so for better debugging. But a really good article on the internet at the moment is by Sasha Salomon. Please go check it out. I'm going to link it in the description. She made a really extensive article about it and also a couple of videos on how to overcome this issue and what the best design thinking or design pattern for this is. But basically, let's talk about errors for a second, because this is very important for going further. What kind of errors do we have normally? So the errors that you're going to get in the response here are just going to be a mix of every error. It can be an internal server error, it can be a 404, it can be a deleted user and so on, it can be something with authentication. So let's try not to mix those, because in GraphQL world, this really matters. So these are real errors on the left, as you can see. So it can be a bad gateway, it can be a 500 error, internal server error. But these on the right, even though they're errors in a way, but they're also kind of results. So they're not completely like errors. So a user can be deleted. Your country may not be available for this API, not be supported, or your user might be blocked. And you want to communicate this clearly to the front end and not just say it's an internal server error, right? So going further, what you can do is actually use the main advantage of GraphQL that it gives us, basically schemas. So what's good about GraphQL? GraphQL lets you request the data that you actually need. So for example, if we need a user data, and then imagine this Twitter, and we also need the tweets, and we need tweets for each user, we can just pack this all into one request, and we're gonna request this from the server, and we're gonna get this. You don't need to make two calls into different API endpoints, right? So we can use this to our advantage when handling errors within GraphQL. So by the help of the union, as you can see here, we can define two types. So a user and user not found error, indicating that it's actually an error, which can also have a message. So by using union for a user result, we're basically saying that it's either going to be a user result or the result is going to be an error. So user not found error in our case. And we're going to pass this as a query result. And then our query itself is going to look something like this. So if there's a user coming back, we're going to act on this and we're going to retrieve the ID and login. Or if there's an error, we're going to have a message for it. And of course, we're going to pass this type name so that the server also gives us, we make sure that the server gives us the type name passed so that it's easier for the front end to kind of have an if statement, switch statement to handle different kinds of responses. Well, the resolver on the server would look something like this. So we're gonna get basically the arguments from the front end. We're gonna query the database. If the user exists, we're gonna return the user. As you can see, type name is here, as I told you. If it doesn't, then we're gonna skip to the next line and we're gonna return a type name for user not found, and we're gonna return a message, just like we wanted. And now this lets us to make it much easier for us. So we don't need to look into the errors array. So I'm gonna scroll up. We don't need to deal with this anymore. This is just a weird array that we would otherwise loop through. So we don't have to work with this anymore. So it already made our life much easier. So that's basically the solution, but let's see how we can even make it more robust and improve it. So imagine you can also define an interface, and then different types would simply implement this interface. So if you look closer here, the user registered invalid input error type actually implements the error. This means that it's already going to have a message. So same thing with country blocked error, it implements error. But what's worth noticing here is that their return, so what they're going to return is basically the same thing. The error interface has a message, and the country blocked error type also has a message. So what we can do here in our query is, if we want to catch this error type, country blocked error, we actually don't need to even put it in the query. We can simply put this on error message, and it's gonna tell us what kind of an error it is, because this on error is basically an interface for different types. So guys, I guess this was it for today. I'm really curious about your opinion. So please, if you have any opinions, make sure you share them with me in the comments below. And as always, if you're interested in such topics, make sure you like this video to promote it to other fellow developers and subscribe to not miss any future videos so that you're always up to date. I'm going to see you in the next video. And also, if you are interested in React, make sure you check one of these videos. Gonna be here, so just click on it, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna learn something new there as well.